Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a quick first impressions video for you on the We Knives Vision R. This is a collaboration with Snex, whose custom knives are, of course, very limited production or very limited in their numbers and very expensive and highly sought after, which means most of us are dealing with collaborations. We're going to be dealing with a production knife. We've already had the Buster on the channel, which is a great little knife. Highly recommended, highly enjoyable. This one is pretty cool, but for different reasons. It's primarily the innovations here that are kind of the big story, and I think your enjoyment of this knife is going to relate directly to how much you like or dislike those innovations, and that's going to be sort of the big factor. All right, so the one thing that I'll point out to start with is this super lock, and of course this placement of the pocket clip. Both of these features make this a fully ambidextrous knife. You can be left-handed, right-handed, makes absolutely no difference right from the start. And there isn't even a change that you need to make. You know, we've talked about lots of, anything with an axis lock is pretty ambidextrous, but you will have to switch the clip. Well, in this case, you don't even have to do that. The clip is just in a neutral position. So it's going to, wherever it is, whatever side you want to put it on doesn't really make a difference. It's going to function about the same. And of course, the same is true of this lock. Very quickly, the way the lock works is you've got this long lock bar. There's a coil spring back here, and the lock bar, as I can show you here, pops forward in between the blade and the stop pin here, which keeps it from closing. And if I want it to close, I've got to push this lock bar backward, and now the knife is free. Now with that backward pushing, I can actually push the lock bar so far that it becomes released from under that stop pin, which can be useful for cleaning, I suppose, but it's just sort of a novelty. It doesn't have a huge amount of practical application, again, other than cleaning, which, we all have backlocks that we can figure out how to clean without being able to take the lock bar out. So these things are interesting, and they make for a very cool knife. The other thing that I have to note about this knife is it's really heavily milled out internally. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Probably to some degree you can, but in addition to the holes, even the titanium around the holes is milled out to save some weight, which is pretty cool. So for a fairly lightweight knife, this is actually rather substantial. So let's quickly touch on size and weight, then I'll come back to materials, and then I'll give you my overall sort of first impression. All right, size on this guy, it's 7 and 15/16 overall, so just a hair under 8 inches, 3.5 inches of blade. Okay, so that's pretty good for a knife of this size. 4 and 7/16 closed. Again, blade to handle ratio there is pretty decent. 3.5 inches of grip area, so not a ton. However, you can choke up on this knife pretty comfortably if had larger hands. But I mean, 3.5 inches is not the end of the world. I have, a size large glove and it works pretty good for me. But I know, if you're like an NBA basketball player or something, you'll probably complain about the size of this and probably nearly every other knife as well. And the weight of 3.6 ounces is pretty good for a titanium frame lock of this size, and that's achieved by that heavy milling. All right, let's talk a little bit about the materials. So we have 20 CV up front on the blade. Very nicely done blade. Now, this is not a big, thick, hefty, hard use type of knife. It's a pretty thin blade stock, pretty thin grind. So this is kind of a slicey EDC style blade. I'm not in love with the blasted finish. I would have loved to see a satin, especially with the grind. So notice how there's kind of this dual, it's sort of a different way of doing a compound grind, and it's hard to spot because of the bead blasting. But there's a bevel here, a bevel here, and then here's the flat all the way up here. So I'll try to move this around a little bit in the light so you can catch. There you go. So see, there's the two grind lines. You can see them most distinctively here. All right. So kind of a cool way of grinding a blade. Now, again, I think this would really stand out in a satin finish. And so I kind of wish that that was available. The handle is going to be titanium with a stonewash finish, fairly light stonewash, very attractive. We often does a really, really nice job of this. Couple little points on the lock. It's pretty easy to use. The opening hole is pretty accessible. And you quickly figure out, at least I quickly figured out, that if you have your finger sort of up here near the front, the knife will drop onto your finger and then you can drop it to close the rest of the way, or you can do the sort of hold from the back, all right, and open and close the knife that way. It is on bearings and the action is quite smooth. The detent is not super super hard. I'll see if you can see, yeah, even on camera, the fact that even with a tripod in the way, I can get that to deploy, shows you how soft the detent is, although it's fairly functional. I've carried this a little bit. I'm actually a little late to the party on my first impressions. I've actually had this for 3 or 4 days. So I have carried it a little bit, have tested it out in pocket. In most of my pants, it works fine. I do have a couple of pairs of pants that are sort of loose fitting, and because of the location of this clip, so you can imagine how this is going to work going into a pocket. It's going to, if you want to put the blade, okay, into the back of the pocket, which I do, then the clip is not going to be here. It's going to be sort of folding over that material, which is okay. Right, I'll just grab a bag here. Imagine this is the pocket that I want to use. Here's the back of my pocket where the string is. So I'm going to drop this in. I find that I have to just put a little pressure on the material, and then there you go. Now, here we go. We're walking down the street. It works fine. But notice how the bag is a perfect example. It already wants to turn a little bit. Um, Obviously, in something that's tighter fitting, your leg is in the way, so it can't turn so easily. But this is something I've noticed happening to me, even in the couple of days that I've worn this with some like looser cargo pants or cargo shorts or something like that. So that's the clip. You may have experience with this before. So some people will look at this clip and they'll kind of know already what they think of it because you've had like something from CRKT or one of the Graham knives, who did clips like this. And I'm trying to think. There's a couple others. So this is not a completely new innovation. It's been done before, and it's implemented here in an effort to make this knife fully ambidextrous without any need for changing. Okay, that is even moving the clip. The lock again is pretty straightforward. It's not dissimilar to things we've seen before, but it is innovative in the way Snex has achieved the lockup. Now, the detent being a little bit soft, the detent is achieved by this little gap in the blade. And I know I'm kind of getting into full review stuff, but since some of this stuff has been talked about before, I figure a little extra data to start off is worthwhile since this knife is kind of around out there. You could increase the detent just by increasing how abrupt this angle is. So make this angle a little steeper, make the lock bar sink in a little bit deeper, and you could pretty easily increase that detent. All right. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that happen from Wii. As it is, it's usable. As I say, I've carried this, I've used it. I don't have a huge issue with it, but I know some people won't have the same experience that I have, or some people, and some people really like a very, very stiff detent. And normally I'm one of those people, but I don't know. I haven't found this that bad. Okay, so what are my overall thoughts on this? First time out of box, having just played with it for a couple of days. I think there are some weak points, okay? And that's the question becomes whether you think the different mechanism and the design and the designer himself, if you say I want something from Snex and I'm willing to put up with some things that I don't love to have that. I like the super lock and I'm willing to put up with some things I don't like. If your interest in the sort of technology of this is sufficient to get you to overlook a couple of minor weak points, then you will love this. If, however, you're just looking at this as a purely practical folding cutting tool and you're not interested in making any of those compromises, you'd probably be better off to look elsewhere. There are tons and tons of high-end Wii knives that are phenomenal. And so, unless you're specifically a fan of this design or this designer, this might not be the knife for you. So that's my initial impression is, hey, really cool knife, but there are a couple of weak points that I don't love. And they're for me, they're not enough to make me dislike the knife, but I know for other people they might be. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to comment down below. Commenting, liking, all that stuff really, really helps the channel, guys, as well as um, using those channel sponsors that are in the description box. I know right now it's tough getting knives from the US, so you need to have some other system in place other than just hoping for the best, I think, at this point. But fixed blades are always a thing. So if you're out for some good fixed blades, check out DLT Trading, check out White Mountain Knives, check out Blade Ops, use those discount codes or those associate links, and that really, really helps me a whole lot. We will talk to you soon.